Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I hope you're somewhere quiet today, maybe somewhere you can dim the lights a little bit and just sit back.
Hmm.
Because we are settling in for something that is, quite frankly, a little mind-bending.
That is definitely putting it mildly.
Yeah, we are covering material today that has a very distinct sort of late-night philosophy vibe to it. You know that feeling when it's 2 in the morning, the world is totally quiet, and you start asking the absolute biggest questions you can possibly ask.
Right, the heavy hitters. Like, why are we here?
Exactly. Why are humans the way we are? Why do we keep making the exact same mistakes over and over again? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, is this entire life just a test?
It is a massive topic. And usually, when people ask those questions, they expect these vague, flowery answers, like life is a mystery or just trust the universe, that sort of thing.
Which is completely unhelpful.
Right, it doesn't give you anything to chew on. But the source material we have today is incredibly specific. It's almost technical in how it describes the function of physical existence. It doesn't just say life is a school. It actually explains the curriculum, the grading system, and the safety protocols of the classroom.
It's like reading the operating manual for reality. And before we get too deep into that cosmic architecture, I do need to make our standard disclaimer. This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are here to explore ideas, unpack texts, and see what resonates. We aren't here to tell you what to believe.
We are just here to show you what's in the documents. And for those of you who follow the material we cover, we like to go straight to the source. Today we are looking at a specific session from the Seth Material. This is session 446.
Which you can find in the early sessions, book 9.
Correct. The date of record for this session is November 6, 1968. And I think that the context of how this session started is actually really important for setting the tone. Because it wasn't some mountaintop meditation moment. It didn't happen in a temple.
It started with a magazine, and not just any magazine. The inciting incident for this really profound metaphysical download was Rob, who transcribed the sessions, reading an article in Playboy.
Which we just have to appreciate the irony there.
I know, the classic. I read it for the article's defense, but in this case, he really was. The article was called Instant Electorate, and it was this fairly cynical piece about the U.S. Congress, the electorate, and the general behavior of the population.
It was dealing with polls and the peccadillos of politicians. And remember, we aren't taking any political sides here. The point is simply that the article put Rob in a very specific mood. He was looking at the political landscape, at human behavior, and basically wondering, what is wrong with us?
Right. It's a feeling a lot of us get when we doom scroll the news today. You look at human history and think, why do we behave this way? Why is there so little change in our fundamental nature? Is there any real sense behind our attitudes, or are we just spinning our wheels? He was feeling genuinely cynical about the whole human experiment.
So he's sitting there feeling cynical, questioning human nature, maybe feeling a bit hopeless about the state of the world. And then at 9:08 p.m., Jane Roberts, the medium for Seth, starts to feel something. And this is where the vibe shifts from a casual evening reading to something a bit spooky.
She felt what she called the pyramid effect while sitting in her rocker.
Yes, that's a specific physical sensation she would get. And it wasn't the usual entry. Usually Seth comes through with a lot of personality. He's witty, he's conversational, he acknowledges Rob immediately.
But this signal meant that this wasn't going to be the usual Seth personality. This signaled that Seth's larger personality was about to speak.
Exactly. And the difference is completely palpable in the transcript. Usually Seth starts with good evening or he jokes around, but here there is nothing. No greeting. Jane's voice just changed. It became high, clear, and distant. Rob describes it as a remote, cool, high, and formal voice that barely varied in pitch.
Which is chilling, honestly.
Yeah.
It implies we are stepping back from the personal mentorship and getting a download from a much wider, completely detached perspective.
It's like the difference between talking to your favorite friendly professor and listening to a recorded announcement from the dean of the universe. It is purely objective.
So let's get into what this voice actually said.
Yeah.
Because it addresses Rob's cynicism directly, but from a perspective he probably didn't see coming at all.
The central thesis here is a total redefinition of what Earth actually is. If you look at the chaos of the world, the politics Rob was reading about, the wars, the confusion, it looks like a total mess. It looks like a mistake. But Seth argues that it is a highly controlled environment. He calls the human race a stage through which consciousness travels. We aren't here to be punished. We are here to learn.
And he uses an analogy that I just absolutely love. It's so simple, but when you apply it to reality, it's pretty mind-blowing. He talks about mud pies.
Yes. Let me actually quote that directly because it's the anchor for this entire discussion. Seth says, as a child forms mud pies from dirt, so you form your civilization out of thoughts and emotions, and then see what you have created, and you must deal with it on its terms.
Mud pies. So physical reality, our cars, our buildings, our governments, our wars, our polling data, that is all just the dirt.
It's the dirt. Think about a toddler in a sandbox. They have this impulse inside them, an idea or an image. They want to make a castle, but they don't really have the skills yet. So they grab the mud, they pile it up, and maybe it looks like a blob. Maybe it falls over. Maybe they get mad and smash it.
And Seth is saying, we are the toddlers.
We're the toddlers in the eyes of the wider universe. We have this incredible power, the power of consciousness, the power to create, but we don't know how to use it yet. So we are placed in a sandbox. The physical matter of Earth is the medium we use to practice.
We take our internal thoughts and emotions, which are invisible, and we project them out into physical reality to see what they look like when they become solid.
Exactly. Which puts a completely different spin on the why is the world so messed up question. If the world is just a collection of mud pies made by toddlers who are still learning motor control,
then the mess is inevitable.
right? It's part of the learning process. You don't get angry at a toddler for making a lopsided mud pie. You say, okay, look us up next time. Try patting it down differently. Seth is saying that we learn by seeing our thoughts turn into reality. If we create something destructive, we have to live with it.
And sometimes, as he puts it, you may be killed by what you have created. If so, the lesson is doubly learned.
Which is an intense way to frame it, doubly learned.
It really is. It implies that the experience of facing the consequences of your own creation, even to the point of your own death, is the ultimate teaching moment. It's not a punishment from God. It's simply cause and effect. I built a wall that was unstable. It fell on me. Now I know how to build better walls.
But this naturally brings up the question of safety. If we are toddlers playing with energy that can literally kill us, isn't that incredibly dangerous? Rob was wondering about the pain and suffering in the world. Why does it feel so hard here? Why is there so much agony if this is just a school?
And this is where Seth introduces the concept of the soundproof and isolated room. This is fascinating to me. He suggests that the physical system we live in is essentially a quarantine zone. He says you cannot do any basic harm.
Let's unpack that. Because looking at history, we have done a ton of harm. We have dropped bombs. We have destroyed environments. We have had genocides. How can he look at human history and say we cannot do basic harm?
Because he means basic harm to the wider universe, to the actual fabric of reality itself. He says, to some extent, you are, comparatively speaking, in a soundproof and isolated room. Hate creates destruction, and in that room, until the lesson is learned, destruction follows destruction.
So we're locked in a room with our own creations. If we scream, only we hear it. If we break the furniture, we are the ones who have to sit on the broken chairs.
Precisely. The mechanism is self-correction through experience. If you project hate, you get destruction back. You are forced to live inside your own nightmare until you realize, hey, maybe I should stop projecting hate. It creates an inescapable feedback loop.
And the isolation is just to protect the rest of the cosmic neighborhood.
Yes. Seth explains that in the wider universe, this destruction does not exist. It's meaningless outside of our room. He compares it to a vivid nightmare. When you are in a nightmare, the monster feels real. The fear is real. The pain is real. Your heart is racing. But when you wake up, you realize it was contained. It didn't hurt your physical body sleeping in the bed.
So Seth is saying our physical lives are the nightmare, and our souls are the ones sleeping in the bed completely safe.
That is such a profound shift in perspective. It makes the tragedy of the world feel more like a simulation. A very painful, very convincing simulation, but a simulation nonetheless.
It's basically the holodeck theory from Star Trek, but with the safety protocols engaged for the outside universe and disengaged for the inside of the room. You can hurt yourself in the simulation, but you cannot blow up the ship.
Okay, so we are in the room. We are throwing mud. We are hurting ourselves, but we aren't hurting the universe. Still, even in a sandbox, you need some guidelines so the kids don't completely destroy themselves before they actually learn the lesson. And this is where Seth talks about ideals.
Right. This is where he completely deconstructs our standard ideas of morality. We usually think of ideals like good, evil, right, wrong as these absolute holy truths written in stone by some divine authority. We think they are the literal structure of the universe.
But Seth has a very different take on them. He calls them built-in survival mechanisms.
He creates a distinction here that is really nuanced. He says that the ideals we have aren't necessarily the ultimate truth of the cosmos, but they are invisible fences, like psychic signs saying beware.
I love that image. Psychic signs. It's like Those keep off the grass signs, or to go back to a sports analogy, the bumpers in a bowling alley.
The bumpers in the lanes is a great analogy. Let's stick with that. The bumpers aren't the game of bowling. The actual game is hitting the pins. But for a beginner, the bumpers keep the ball in play so you can actually learn how to throw it down the lane.
Seth says these ideals keep the human race pointed in beneficial directions. They prevent us from wiping ourselves out completely while we are still in this clumsy mud pie stage.
He also refers to them as instructions on a blackboard.
Yes, he says the ideals are like instructions on a blackboard that will not be erased. The implication is that while you are in the classroom, those instructions are the law. You cannot ignore them. He says within your system, you cannot go against them without courting madness.
Courting madness. That is a very strong phrase.
It is. Because if you ignore the invisible fences, if you decide that murder is fine or total destruction is good, you detach from the consensus reality and the survival mechanisms of the species. You go mad in the context of the system because you are violating the core safety protocols that keep the school running.
But here is the twist. Once you actually learn the lesson, once you know how to create responsibly, the nature of those rules changes.
Right. Once you have evolved to a state of consciousness where you naturally create efficiently and benevolently, you realize the ideals were just shadows of instructions. You don't need a rule telling you don't kill if you have evolved to a state where the idea of killing is literally impossible to conceive.
It's like you don't need a warning sign telling you not to put your hand on a hot stove once you fully understand the concept of heat. The sign is only there for people who don't understand heat yet.
Exactly. The ideals are placeholders for wisdom. Until you have the wisdom, you desperately need the rules. They provide the only sanity we have here. They are the training wheels.
So if this is a school and we are learning to handle energy without blowing up the science lab, the big question is, when do we graduate? How do we get out of here?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Seth is very clear on the criteria. You leave the physical system, meaning you stop reincarnating, when you have learned the lessons, specifically when you have learned to handle energy and create responsibly.
And he contrasts our slow system with more advanced systems. This part gave me chills, honestly. It really made me realize why Earth is so frustratingly slow.
It shows the stakes involved.
Yeah.
Seth explains that in other more advanced systems of reality, thoughts and emotions are automatically and immediately translated into action, into camouflage.
Immediately. No lag time whatsoever.
No lag time. Just think about that for a second. Here on Earth, you can have a terrible, destructive thought. You can get cut off in traffic, and for a split second, you wish that other driver would crash. You can imagine a building collapsing. But it doesn't happen instantly. There's a built-in buffer. Time acts as a cushion.
You have time to reconsider, to change your mind, or you simply lack the focused energy to make it happen.
And thank goodness for that. If every intrusive thought I had instantly materialized, I would be a walking disaster. I mean, you've all had those moments of flash anger. If I had the power to manifest instantly, I would be a danger to society.
We all would be. We would be a complete disaster. And that is exactly Seth's point. He says if we were allowed into those open systems with our current lack of discipline, we would wreak absolute havoc. We are in the slow motion version of reality specifically, so we can see the link between I thought this and this happened without it being instantaneously catastrophic.
So we are here to master the transformation of emotional energy into action and form. That is the core curriculum. We are learning to drive in an empty parking lot at 5 miles per hour before we are ever allowed onto the Autobahn.
Yes. And until you master that, until you can be trusted to think a thought and know that its materialization will be beneficial, you stay in the sandbox. You stay in the soundproof room.
But we aren't all in the same grade, are we? I mean, looking around the world, some people seem to be making very sophisticated mud pies, and others are, well, throwing the mud at each other's faces.
Seth addresses that disparity. He mentions that the system always includes fragments who are entering for the first time, the freshmen effectively, as well as individuals in their third, fourth, or final reincarnations.
And he also mentions teachers within the system.
Right. There are those in their last reincarnation. These are the seniors in high school who sort of know the ropes and help the younger ones along. And then there are personalities who've actually graduated. They have left the system, but they are assigned to come back and help. They are like the student teachers or the alumni who return to guide the rest of us.
That brilliantly explains the massive disparity in wisdom we see across the population. It's a one-room schoolhouse. You have kindergartners and PhD candidates sitting in the exact same room.
And that friction is a crucial part of the learning.
Right.
The older souls learn patience and teaching methods. The younger souls learn from the examples of the older ones. The confusion, the conflict, It is all part of the mixed-grade classroom environment.
Okay, I want to pivot to what I think is the trippiest part of this session. We have established the school analogy. That makes logical sense. But then Seth layers on this Inception-style concept of reality as a dream.
This is where the larger personality of Seth really starts to zoom out. He stops talking about learning and starts talking about the fundamental nature of existence itself. He says, as you dream and have a dream existence while still involved in the physical dimension, so is the physical dimension a dream within another dimension.
The double dream.
Yes. Think about when you sleep at night, you have a dream. In that dream, you create a whole world. You might be solving problems, facing fears, running away from something. You are the protagonist of your dream, but who is dreaming you? Seth says that your real life, this physical life we are living right now, is actually the dream of your higher self.
So somewhere in a higher dimension, my real self is sleeping or meditating or focusing.
Yeah.
And this conversation, this studio, the coffee I had this morning, this is the dream that Neil Self is currently having.
Essentially, yes. And just as our nightly dreams help us solve physical problems, our physical lives help the higher self solve its problems. We are acting out scenarios for the benefit of a much larger consciousness.
That is deeply humbling and also a little confusing if you think about it too hard. If I'm just a dream character, do I even have free will?
Seth would say you are the higher self, just focused very narrowly. He says, the whole construction, however, is like an educational play in which you are the producers as well as the actors. We wrote the script. We aren't just victims of circumstance. We set up these challenges.
There is a play within a play within a play. Oh, excuse me. He says there is a play within a play within a play, and there is no end to the within of things. That is the quote.
Yeah.
It is honestly vertigo-inducing.
It completely dissolves the victim mentality. If you realize you are the producer, you realize the challenges in your life aren't happening to you. They're set up by you for a reason. You deliberately cast yourself in this role.
Seth makes a really controversial comparison here about guilt and death. He says that in our nightly dreams, if we kill a dream character, we don't wake up feeling guilty. We know it wasn't final.
Right. And he argues that from the perspective of the higher self, physical death is viewed in the exact same way. The higher self knows that the personality hasn't been destroyed, it has just woken up. So the tragedy of death is an illusion of the dream state.
Which is a very hard pill to swallow when you're in the dream and losing someone you love. It feels absolute.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And Seth acknowledges that. He says the agonies are sorely felt. He doesn't dismiss the pain of the dream at all. He doesn't say it doesn't hurt. He just provides the broader context that it isn't permanent. He is offering the perspective of the one who wakes up, not the one who is still trapped in the nightmare.
And this leads to the ultimate realization. How do you wake up? Or rather, how do you finally leave physical reality?
Seth says you leave when you realize you are dreaming it. You leave physical reality when you come to the same realization, when you fully realize you are creating your own problems and can change them.
It's lucid dreaming.
It is exactly that. It's becoming lucid in the waking state.
I always joke about lucid dreaming. But imagine applying that to your actual daily life. Imagine being stuck in terrible traffic, feeling the rage build up, and then suddenly realizing, wait, I'm creating this experience of frustration. This traffic is just the scenery of the dream. I can completely change how I interact with it.
That is the mastery he is talking about. When you stop reacting to the mud pie as if it's a permanent external object and start realizing it's just your own thought made solid, then you are ready to graduate. You don't need the mud anymore. You have realized the nature of the illusion.
Before we wrap up, we have to touch on one more major connection Seth makes, because it ties right back to the article Rob was reading about politics and the state of the world. Rob was worried about political chaos. But Seth connects human conflict directly to something even bigger, natural disasters.
This is the energy connection. Seth says problems leading to world wars also cause worldwide natural disasters.
Which sounds almost superstitious on the surface. Like the gods are angry, so the volcano erupted.
But Seth explains it as physics, not superstition. He says it is all just materialization of energy projected by those who have not learned how to handle it.
So aggressive energy is aggressive energy regardless of how it manifests.
Exactly. If you have a population projecting massive amounts of chaotic, destructive, hateful energy, that energy has to go somewhere. It creates a massive charge, materializes. Socially, it materializes as war or political strife. But environmentally, it materializes as storms, earthquakes, upheavals. The planet is reflecting our internal state back to us just as much as our society is.
It's the soundproof room reflecting our screams back at us.
Yes, such reactions fire through the dream universe also. It is all deeply connected. You cannot separate the weather from the collective consciousness, according to this view. We are affecting the stage itself with our emotional output.
So let's try to summarize this chill little session. It turns out Rob's cynicism about the poles was really just the tip of the iceberg.
Just as a tiny scratch on the surface of what was really going on.
According to this download, Earth is a safe training ground. We are in a quarantine zone. We are making mud pies out of our thoughts to learn how to be responsible creators. Destruction feels incredibly real to teach us, but it isn't fatal to the soul. And ultimately, we are dreaming this life to solve problems for our greater selves.
That is the curriculum. It really is a complete reframe of the human condition.
It reframes absolutely everything. Instead of why is this happening to me, the question becomes, what am I trying to learn from this mud pie I just made?
And how can I build a better one? Or even better, how can I realize I am the one holding the mud?
Exactly. Now, as we mentioned at the top, this deep dive was based on the Seth Material, specifically the Early Sessions, Book 9, published by New Awareness Network.
And we really cannot stress this enough. We're just scratching the surface of a single session. There are hundreds of these sessions.
Yeah.
And the depth is astonishing. We gave you the highlights, but the nuance in the actual text is incredible. We strongly encourage you to study the original Seth Material books yourself. There is so much more practical advice than we could ever cover here.
You can find them by visiting the New Awareness Network website and bookstore at sethcenter.com/The Early Sessions. Go check it out. It is absolutely worth the deep dive.
Definitely go read it for yourself.
I want to leave you with one final thought. We talked extensively about the soundproof room. The idea that we are quarantined here because we cannot be trusted with the real power of the universe yet. That we are protected from doing any real lasting damage.
There's a safety net.
It is a comforting thought in a way, but it's also a serious provocation. Because if this life, with all its intensity, all its drama, all its wars and storms, if this is the muted safety bumper version of reality, imagine what kind of power you actually have waiting for you once you finally learn to stop throwing the mud pies.
Right.
What are you actually capable of creating once the safety protocols are turned off?
That is the real question.
Something for you to think about while you are falling asleep tonight. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We will see you next time.